Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, episode 220. Should you watch The Last Kids on Earth? Feat complete. I'm Mario Rada.
And I'm Andy Bowman.
And today we are going to talk about a hour-long show, let's say show, on Netflix called The Last Kids on Earth. And we are also going to have an interview conducted by my co-host Andy. Oof, this is tough for me, guys. My allergies are recovering from my allergies. But Andy, before we do that, we have news, and why don't you start us off?
All right. We're getting the reboot that we definitely do not deserve. But we are getting Walker, Texas Ranger, starring Jared Padalecki.
Oh yeah. So we just talked about reboots. We're excited to get one that nobody is asking for, but also lots of people are kind of like really excited for. You know, like the general consensus online is, man, I didn't know that this was something that I was okay with, you know? So that's the general consensus I'm seeing anyway. What are your thoughts on this, Andy?
Pretty much, like, I'm okay with this. I just figured this is going to be another one of the, network television cash grabs. You know, this is a very blank of the week show, at least the original was, from what I remember from TV Land when I was like 12.
Sure, yeah. It has, you're right, it has the chance to be one of these Shooter, MacGyver, Lethal Weapon, Rush Hour TV show reboots that are just like, you know, what are we doing here?
I am interested, though, to see Jared Padalecki doing any kind of actual action.
Like non-supernatural, right?
Right. Well, he barely ever, like, throws a punch or anything in Supernatural, too.
They do it a lot, like season 1. And then never again.
Right. It mostly turns into like just planning out the trap, and then, you know, the trap failing, and then them Scooby-Doo running around like.
And I love it.
I don't know. I mean, like that's it. It's just like Supernatural is basically Scooby-Doo. Like. Yeah,
it is. It's like an R-rated Scooby-Doo, and I'm okay with that I've been okay with it for a while. So.
Which they did do that Supernatural Scooby-Doo crossover, so.
Which I haven't seen yet, which makes me sad, actually, that I haven't seen it. I'm interested. I'm more interested in whatever it is Jensen Ackles does in his post-Supernatural career. I think he is by far the better actor of the two of them.
Absolutely. He was apparently offered Hawkeye.
Yeah, that hurts me. I think we mentioned that. It hurts me so much because it's just... Like, wow, we could have had him... Like, we could have had real charm and gravitas in that role. And instead we got Jeremy Renner, who some people really enjoy. And I just don't... Like, I don't get it. So...
Well, you should apologize to his mom because she's listening.
That's on Mike joking. No, he's doing all right. He had his app and all that. Stuff. Yeah,
I forgot about his app.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say about this.
Yeah, me neither. Let's move on to another piece of news that you are more in tune with than I, Andy. A movie, we're getting a sequel to the Tomb Raider movie, if I'm not mistaken. Why don't we talk about that a little?
All right, so Tomb Raider 2 is going to be directed by the one, the only, Ben Wheatley. Now, most of you are probably saying to yourself, well, who the hell is Ben Wheatley? I've never heard of this dude. And you know what? That's fine. Ben Wheatley has directed a few movies that maybe you've seen, maybe you've heard about. He directed this movie called High Rise with Tom Hiddleston that was pretty much a dystopic society falling apart in a skyscraper. He directed this movie with Brie Larson called Free Fire that was a shootout in real time in a warehouse. He's such a bizarre artsy director that this is just a weird and noteworthy piece of information. This getting Ben Wheatley to direct a pretty big blockbuster movie would be like getting, Darren Aronofsky or just some other kind of artsy director. It's so bizarre. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. Marvel is certainly taking steps towards this hiring practice. I think Tomb Raider is a Sony film. Let's look this up. But see, and if this is telling me that Ben Wheatley is somebody who wants to direct this, and what I mean by that is like this might be the case where this is a passion project for him, and if he's a talented filmmaker, so it's Warner Brothers, Tomb Raider. If he's a talented filmmaker, excuse me, if he's a talented filmmaker, then that passion and the skill will come through no matter the genre. And I'm all for that. The problems come is when you get a guy, let's say Colin Trevorrow, I don't know, I'm just using him as an example, who's just like, yeah, this guy's an adequate filmmaker. Let's have him make Jurassic Park, and we don't, we don't get a good movie, so to speak. So I think this pathway to me is more promising than the alternative, which is get a big name.
All right, we do have to take a look at that short movie, Jurassic World short movie that just came out.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, and we'll mention it in next week's episode, where we are, spoiler alert, talking about Ad Astra and other space movies. But I am, like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I watched the first Vikander Tomb Raider. It was fine. Nobody has been able to, for more than lightning in a bottle purposes, like Brandon Fraser's The Mummy, nobody's been able to replicate that Indiana Jones formula. And so I think Tomb Raider, I think this Uncharted film that's forever in limbo, are all trying to do that, and to mixed results. So
yeah, and maybe this will just turn into actual survival torture porn. I don't know. Like this is just bizarre to me, and I am infinitely more interested in this movie now that this announcement has been made.
Yeah, totally agree there. Our last piece of news is a couple of rumors for the Batman film directed by, what's his name, Andy?
Yes.
I don't. Matt Reeves.
Planet of the Apes.
I haven't seen those movies. I refuse. But the Matt Reeves who did the Planet of the Apes movie. So we are getting. Well, we do know that Robert Pattinson is in the role. We are rumored that Jonah Hill is playing. I didn't read the article. I'm guessing it's the Penguin.
I believe it is undetermined.
Oh, okay.
But I was really thinking he'd just be Robin.
That'd be actually pretty awesome. But not awesome. It would just be hilarious, really. I'm whatever. I think it's a little too on the nose, and I don't know what this film's gonna look like. The other piece of news is a rumor, rather. Jeffrey Wright, I believe his name is, right?
Yes, Jeffrey Wright.
He is going to be, the rumors, he's going to play Commissioner Gordon. And that, to me, is inspiring casting, and I'm way more interested in that than I would be, the alternative, what's his name? J.K. Simmons. Yes, like that. That is way more interesting to me than J.K. Simmons playing Commissioner Gordon there. So, what are your thoughts on this potential casting?
All right. First of all, I would peg Jeffrey Wright as Dr. Hugo Strange.
Yes, he certainly looks the part.
Yeah. I am stoked about him being involved in anything. I really love Jeffrey Wright. He was really good in Boardwalk Empire. And I've been keeping an eye on him ever since.
Mm-hmm.
So That's really cool. Jonah Hill is such a mixed bag.
Yeah, yeah, that's a concern, right? Like it's does is he gonna? If somebody told me,
Oh,
go ahead.
apparently it is the Riddler.
Oh, the Riddler, better, but still, it's just like, are we sure that Jonah Hill is the guy to be doing this? I just don't know. It's a
Well,
strange.
I think Jonah Hill can do that manicness that the Riddler needs.
Okay, yeah,
I think he can bounce back and forth between being serious, being manic, and just being kind of funny. Oh, man, I feel like people are yelling and that this Collider headline is wrong.
here's the thing. I can also see Jonah Hill playing a character who totally believes he's smarter than everybody else in the room.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, to me, that actually is more interesting than the Penguin.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping for the Riddler. I think he'd be great in the Riddler. I would also, as a bigger guy, I would love a fat Riddler. I would love some fat representation.
That'd be awesome. How about the Clue Master? Do you know what I'm talking about? The guy with the big orange. It's essentially the same thing.
I'm looking him up. Clue Master.
Pulling deep from my
Wow.
my knowledge.
Oh man, that would be.
Yeah, he's like a game show version of the Riddler.
I think it'd be really funny if this is just a joke and he really just ends up playing like Killer Croc or something.
That'd be interesting. I mean, sure. I this would be really funny if like these two rumors are like fake outs. They're in the movie, but they are Hugo Strange and the Joker instead of Gordon and the Riddler, respectively.
I do think though that Jonah Hill, like in all seriousness, the role he should play in any Batman movie is Batmite.
That'd be interesting. You could have him be both like a live action version and then like the form into like some CGI, gross looking Mixes Piddle like type thing.
Yeah, I would enjoy that, but in reality, I think the Riddler is a great role for him. He's just such a mixed bag. He's either great and he's lovely, or he's just kind of phoning it in.
Yeah, I see that. That well, I don't see it. It's what happens essentially in these roles, and it is. I'm curious as to how committed people will be for this film. Right, I don't know. I just don't quite know if they're going to get a level of proficiency or commitment or excellence that the other DC movies never quite reached after certain aspects of Man of Steel. I think certain parts of Man of Steel were top notch. I think other parts were awful. But there is that. Anything else? Any other thoughts on the Batman casting rumors?
No, I just want this. I really want this to be a detective story, and the Riddler would be the villain to do that.
Yes, that would be really interesting. I think the Riddler is one of the characters that you can definitely have him in there and make it a believable movie where he's matching intellect. And I think that's really important for a Batman movie, especially of course for like a detective movie. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic with this Batman film despite my my lack of interest in the Apes films. The Apes films are always like a conceptual conceit I had. I'm just like I just don't. I just never really cared for those that concept. You know how some people just don't can't do zombie movies. That was me.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. God, Jeffrey Wright though, like, I mean, that is some real gravitas to this world. Like, that might be the best casting for Commissioner Gordon. Period.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I totally agree with you. I'm just not, like I said, I'm not quite not not quite
What if he's
there.
Black Mask and they're just not gonna have him have a mask?
I guess. But let's move on, Andy. What are some ways that our listeners can support our show?
Okay, listeners. By now, if you probably know the deal, but you can go to patreon.com/geek101 and you can donate to our Patreon. You can, enjoy the special perks that come along with being a Patreon, which are, sneak peeks at what we're doing for the month, secret special episodes that no one else will get. I'm still trying to convince Ariel to do an episode on the Banana Splits movie. And that's a great way to, pitch in, help the show out. Just $1 a month or whatever you want to give us. 23 cents if it'll let you. I don't think it will. Other than that, though, if you don't want to give us money or you are already giving us money, you can go to iTunes and leave a little 5-star review. You can write a review, help people find us. We would love you forever. I really want to make this clear that Ariel and I, if we can get to 100 reviews, I will force Ariel to sit down and watch back-to-back Suicide Squad and Batman vs. Superman. Okay, 100 reviews. We're at 74 right now. And we would love to get that before the end of the year. 100, so 26. Someone can make 26 different accounts. Now, I'm not encouraging this because it is against iTunes policy, but you could make 26 different accounts and just give 5 stars, say, great podcast, and leave it at that. But we are trying to get to 100. We would love to get to 100. And we really want to, get out there, become more popular. Basically, what we're saying is we're coming after Mark Maron.
Yeah, we're coming after Mark Maron. We're coming after, what was that, Film Spotting, coming after you, Bill Simmons, coming after everybody.
We're coming after father of podcasting, Conan.
Conan, because Conan's in it now. It's big, because he's in it. But yeah, I totally agree. I would really enjoy if this podcast was bigger and it'd be a really fun endeavor to reach more people and all that fun stuff.
Those chumps at Mad About Movies have 876 ratings. Come on, guys.
Yeah, those guys are the worst. Just kidding. Brian's gonna listen to this in like 2 months. He's like, hey, wait. Okay.
Either that or he's going to be busy making iTunes accounts, so you have to watch Batman vs. Superman again.
He's the one. He's the guy. So in terms of not just Patreon and iTunes reviews, we do want to also encourage listener interaction and listener feedback. So on October 15th, we're going to have a top 10 Geek 101 scary movies list, and that'll be a list determined by you, the listeners, us, the hosts, and a bunch of other contributors to the Geek 101 family. Basically, we are going to have people send us their top 10 scary movies. We will assign a point score to numbers 1 through 10, and we will tally them up and see which ones end up scoring the highest and talk about those films. If we can get them done in time, like I'll watch all 10. I'll watch the top 10 that I haven't seen before. But go on Facebook, go on Twitter. We will continue to remind you on those vehicles that to give us your top 10 scary movie lists.
Right. And on the Patreon, Matthew Duluth, let me know how to pronounce it, Matt. He did give the suggestion that what we do for the next time is that we provide the list and have people rank them or
Okay.
rank their top 10, which might be a good idea because friend of the show, Hassan, dropped one of a scary movie that I just kind of forgot about, and I was just so surprised. But he just dropped that in my lap, and I was like, oh yeah, people have varied opinions.
That's
So
a very
we might,
Hassan thing to do.
yeah. It's a great movie, but it's just a weird, I think Dutch movie,
Yeah.
or Swedish movie.
Sure,
Yeah.
we will take a look at that. Maybe we'll even enter it at this point, or give like suggestions. These are the ones that we're kind of looking at. We can even I don't know if we add our top 10, maybe listeners can just take a look at that. Anything else, Andy, in regards to listeners and listener interaction?
I think that's it. I hope I'm not forgetting anything. Guys, just, tweet at us. Let us know. We really want to start interacting with you guys, want to start doing more things and talking about things, because that's what nerds love to do. That's what geeks love to do. We love to talk about everything that we love.
Yes, long are the days of unashamedly talking about geek culture only in the confines of the comic book store. We can do it everywhere now. By everywhere, I mean the internet. Andy, let us talk about this show, The Last Kids on Earth. All
right. So for those of you who are unaware, The Last Kids on Earth is an animated hour-long movie that's going to be a series on Netflix. And the basic premise of The Last Kids on Earth is that a giant monster apocalypse and a zombie apocalypse happen at the same time. And while most of the main characters' families either died or are on a cruise or are out, a group of 13-year-olds is kind of left alone, Walking Dead style, in a city. And it's just it's a fun animated swashbuckling adventure based on the children's books of the same name.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And I do know that this is a popular young adult book. I actually have the first book on my desk right now, and it does some really cool things where, it's a little bit between, boring only text books and picture books, where it's definitely chapters. It does have little drawings though, and it's very cute. This is kind of a postmodern, modern, like what kids would be like today if they were to go through a zombie apocalypse,
right.
with the desire to vlog and talking about them chivos, them achievements.
Yeah. I really liked the video game-esque aesthetic of the show, yeah. But we like you said, we are talking. We're gonna do a should you watch, and after we do the should you watch, we will insert an interview that you, Andy, did with.
I interviewed Torrin Atkinson. He is a storyboard artist and revisionist for this show. He is a personal podcasting hero. I mentioned this in the interview with him, that really without his original podcast, I would probably not have found Geek 101. I can actually trace the line of guests from his podcast to Geek 101.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So I told them, it's his fault that everyone has to deal with me.
He and I are gonna have to have a conversation.
Yeah. He also did want me to go ahead and it was something that he forgot to mention. He really wanted to say that his studio worked with Max Brellier and the illustrator Douglas Holgate, and that they were amazing and wonderful to work with. It's when you're doing adaptations, especially adaptations where there are illustrations, it's important to work with the creators.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just being able to work with the creators really helped them kind of solidify the feel of the show. Just want to he asked me after the interview to just go ahead and mention that because he really had a great time and that these people were quite delightful.
All right, that's awesome. I'm excited for the listeners and myself to actually listen to that. Interesting. I actually get to listen to the show and not, have to cringe or take out ums or, you know.
Oh, you will still cringe.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But before that, we want to do a quick should you watch for The Last Kids on Earth. Andy, what did you think of this show?
Okay, this show, there are some very dark jokes that made me like literally laugh out loud that I was not expecting from this show.
Do you have one off the top of your head?
Yeah. Like they mention early on his best friend Quint, mentions that his parents were on a cruise, and the main character, Jake, I think that's his name. God, I remember the other characters' names, but I do not remember the main character's name.
I don't either.
Jack. Okay, Jack. Jack says, "Well, your parents are probably." Quint just looks at him and goes, "I choose to believe that they will be back." And it's just a kind of a funny refrain that keeps coming up every time something happens. He's like, "When my parents get back, they will be upset about this, and I will blame you."
Yeah.
Just that, or mentioning that, like, "Oh, well, what about your babysitter since your parents were out of town?" "Oh, she was zombified weeks ago."
That one got me. That was a good one.
So it has these just kind of dark moments that I really feel like kids will like because it kind of respects kids in that way.
Yeah, so I forgot what podcast I was listening to, but they were talking about the Shazam movie and how basically like a lot of filmmakers today forget that kids like to be scared. And it's something like we're like kids are way more mature than when we want to give them credit for, and adults kind of, as a public school teacher, this is absolutely true. We don't want to think of 13-year-olds as being, knowing things like violence or sex or things like that. It made me uncomfortable just saying it, but they do. They know these things, right? They know dark jokes. They know inappropriate things. We knew those things at 13, 12, 13, middle school age. So I think the show deserves a lot of credit for realizing that and not doing it not like talking about it in a inappropriate way or stuff like that. Like it's a realistic way that these kids would be talking.
Right. Yeah, it's such a bizarre thing to realize that, like, kids they can handle things more than you think they can. And this show definitely, I think, appreciates that a little bit more.
For sure, yeah.
The show also, I mean, it's just very tropish where you've got the big dumb bully who helps them out.
Yeah.
You've got the the quote unquote love interest. That the main character is a little overzealous about saving.
Very clearly so.
Right. And I think they're able to kind of spin that around, and later on they will further spin it.
Yes, totally agree.
It was a little cringy at the beginning, but I think it's going to be quite fine. This is very piloty. This is very getting the band together.
Yes, I really enjoyed that aspect of it too, actually.
Right. And I do want to say that the show itself, is not out yet, but it will be out. And it's mentioned in my interview too, there are some amazing voice actors coming up in this show. Bruce Campbell, Keith David, Rosario Dawson, Mark Hamill. So they are pulling out the stops for this, I think.
Nice. So I'll go next. I really enjoyed the show. I think it was charming. I think it was funny. I think it was appropriately, I don't want to say the word marketed because I didn't see any marketing for it. I think it was appropriately toned for the very clear audience it had, like we were mentioning. That was just a fancy way of saying it's meant for preteens, and I think preteens would really enjoy it. Um, I think it's a perfect, or it's perfectly modern. Um, I think it very harpens very much on video game culture. I think it's really, really well animated in a way where the character designs are simple and yet the animation and coloring is dynamic. So that was really important to me, and I hate when you get like a nice looking show, nice looking character designs, and yet something just seems so absent and flat. Um, I'm trying to think. For example, if you watched Lilo and Stitch, the movie, and then you watch the same character designs, the same, everything, and you watch it like the TV show, like that care is not put into it, and
Right.
Ariel,
Yes. You did mention to me that like this is why you don't like the DC animated
the movies, yes.
is they always feel flat.
Yeah.
Now I did just watch Hush, and that was flat in more ways than one. And anyone who loves the story of Hush because it's really cool, it has a lot of really neat moments in it. Don't watch the animated movie. They ruined it so badly.
Yeah, I heard about that. You were telling me. I'm never gonna watch it. That's rough, really rough. And so I think the more interesting conversation with The Last Kids on Earth is kind of like that end of the should you watch conversation where you would like this if you like blank. So do you want to get into that now, or do you want to wait a little bit?
Yeah. You'd like this if you liked Gravity Falls, I think.
Yes, I think that's something I did not think of, and but I think you were absolutely right. That's a really good one there, Andy. Definitely Gravity Falls. I have a really good one. You ready? It's gonna blow your mind unless you didn't thought of it already. Kids Next Door.
Oh man, yeah. I totally. Oh, thanks. Yeah, that is a little bit better than. Yeah. It's Kids Next Door with zombies.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's Kids Next Door with zombies. I really got that vibe in like the best way. I don't know. I really enjoyed what this is, and so here's the conversation we had a little earlier off air. I think when it comes to shows like this and shows like Gravity Falls, there is a certain line of, is this a good kids show or is this a good show? And I think on that chart, that imaginary chart that I want you to picture in your head, like the top of the top is Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a great show that happens to be a kid show. At the bottom of that list, I don't remember what I had originally said, but let's say something like, I don't know, one of the Batman cartoons that's not, Batman Brave and the Bold. I don't know, something that just happens to be a decent kid show. I think Troll Hunters, which we talked about in previous episodes that Andy and I are both big fans of. I think Troll Hunters is the perfect line of this is a really good show. This is a really good kids show. It's like right in the middle. I mentioned I think Samurai Jack is above that line somewhere, and I think The Last Kids on Earth is below that line, where it's still geared more towards kids show than great show.
Yeah, and this is God, I really enjoyed Troll Hunters, but I agree with you. Another, I think that this works. I don't think my wife thinks this works. But I also think that if you like Star versus the Forces of Evil, you would enjoy this. Star versus the Forces of Evil was a really fun Disney Channel animated show that is just very frenetic, but it has the same thing of like kids versus monsters.
Okay. I haven't seen that, but I will take your word for it. I think something like, if you like one of, a good Star Wars show, shows like this, I feel like are so so well crafted, and it's really up to the creators of the show how high they want to punch, right? How hard they want to swing for, hey, let's just make this a great show. I think maybe Samurai Jack might be a great show. I think something like the Clone Wars, the original one, Glenn Taratovsky, something. I'm gonna look it up right now so that people don't get mad at me. I think the original I'm trying to look at his name. It's not coming up. What is it?
Tartakovsky.
Oh, I found it. Gendy Tartakovsky. There we go. Gendy Tartakovsky. His original Clone Wars show is above that line. I think his, 3D CGI animated one is below that line. I think this one is still in the discussion in that Troll Hunters range. I really enjoyed it. It was so enjoyable.
Speaking of Tartakovsky, we do have to take a look at Primal when that starts hitting.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, let me tell you something about that Clone Wars miniseries, Ariel,
Okay.
because that Clone Wars series got my hopes all up about General Grievous. He is such a terrifying badass in that animated show, and he's something that grown trained Jedi are afraid of.
They are absolutely horrendously mortified at this guy and the prospect of what he can do to you.
Right. And that's before he gets his lightsabers.
And then we get
that.
Whatever it is, yeah. We get whatever it is we get. It's really frustrating to have that be the end result of something we were looking forward to so much. Yeah, that was frustrating. Anything else in regards to this show that's worth discussing, you think, Andy?
Yeah. I do think that it's worth discussing if you have maybe a younger brother, people who listen to the show aren't old enough to have kids, right, Ariel?
I disagree with you
right?
there.
I know. Yeah. It's if you have a younger family member or just a weird relationship with the kid next door, this is a good show to watch and share with them, I think. This first hour is very pilot heavy. I'm really hoping that when they go to the 22-minute segments of the actual episodes, it'll be very different.
Yeah.
It's it's just a fun watch. I enjoyed the little achievements things because I don't know how it is for you interacting with children, but from what I know, from my little cousins, kids love Minecraft and they love achievements.
Oh yeah, they love Minecraft, they love Fortnite, they love all that nonsense. So there's that.
Yeah. So yeah. I just think this is perfect for sitting down and watching something kind of nerdy. Maybe let an 8-year-old watch it and they'll feel like a bit of a grown up with you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Andy, I think it's time for us to get into, or for you, I should say, to get into the interview. So
right, and we'll go to the magical land of interviews. Ooh. Hey, I'm here with my personal podcasting hero, Torin Atkinson. Now, listeners, just so you are aware, there is a very large chance that if it was not for a earlier project that Torin did, I would not have discovered the Geek 101 podcast, and I would not have been invited on to co-host with it later. So literally there's a 30% chance that this man I'm talking to right now is responsible for you listening to me right now.
I say 33 and a third.
Well, Kevin's a short man, right? I'll give you the full 35.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Anyway, with me is Torrin Atkinson. He used to be the co-host of an amazing podcast called Caustic Soda, and I reached out to him because he did some work on Netflix's new animated show, The Last Kids on Earth.
Yay!
So Torrin, what was your role in The Last Kids on Earth?
It's interesting. I actually, way back when, Atomic Cartoons, this is the company that it basically made it in terms of animation. And the Atomic Cartoons sent out a call to everyone who was, I can't remember what show I was working on at the time, to basically put together a pitch package to get it greenlighted for a TV series. So a bunch of people at the studio put together, a little package about what the show would be about and what it would look like and stuff like that. And so my friend Carl and I put it together, and we were the ones who were chosen to kind of refine our pitch package. So I was actually there from the very beginning of the animated iteration of Last Kids on Earth. But since then, my role has been storyboard revisionist.
Okay, now what is a storyboard? Just assuming that our listeners know nothing about animation.
Yeah.
What is a storyboard artist and what is a storyboard revisionist?
So a storyboard artist is someone who, it's like making a comic for the final product. So the director, the storyboard artist will get the script. The storyboard artist will usually get the voice track. And the storyboard artist will usually also get the designs for everything that is needed in the episode that they're working on. And then they'll have a big, long meeting with the director about what they want to see in the episode. And then they'll just draw out the episode. So the storyboard artist is kind of like director and cinematographer. And in terms of acting, visually acting, like the storyboard artist will do all the facial expressions and all the body posture and all the physical acting of all of the characters. The voice acting is, if it's good, it's fantastic to work with. It's going to be really super fun. So they will have these episodes are 22-minute episodes as opposed to a lot of cartoons like SpongeBob SquarePants is usually 11 minutes long. And so sometimes they will have one storyboard artist doing the entire episode. In the case of Last Kids on Earth, we had a whole team, and there were so many very complicated scenes of fighting zombies and monsters and whatnot, that usually an episode would be broken down between 4 and 5 storyboard artists, and they'd take different sections. Now, the storyboard revisionist, so what happens is, it's getting a little long-winded, but it's a complicated process.
I love it.
The director, once the first pass of the storyboards are done, the director will look at it, and the director will say, okay, we need to change this and that and this and that and the other thing. So then it will go, sometimes it'll go back to the original storyboard artist to do some revisions, but if not, if they've already moved on to the next episode or for whatever reason, that's where the storyboard revisionists come in. So the revisionist will take all the notes that the director made, and then we'll send it back to him, and then it will go to the client, and the client might be the production company that's not an animation studio that is providing the money to get this show made, or in our case, Netflix. So Netflix will see the animatic, which is all of the drawings, because there's an editor who will take all the drawings the storyboard artist does, and along with he'll edit it together so that the timing is correct, all the sound effects, the music, and all that kind of stuff. And that is he'll make an animatic. You've probably seen an animatic on YouTube somewhere, okay. or on your special features for Lord of the Rings or whatever. They'll make an animatic, which is especially for like the big budget films. For a lot of movies, they don't do animatics, they don't do storyboards, but for anything with animation, you kind of have to do it.
Okay. Now, a question about animatics here. I've actually watched some like motion comics back in the day. Early days of Netflix, they had a bunch of Marvel motion comics on.
I worked on those, some of them.
Oh, wow. That's kind of awesome. But they're from an animation standpoint, they're pretty stiff, and they just go
Yes.
through the panel to panel. Is that kind of what an animatic is?
It is kind of like that. A motion comic is like kind of a fancy animatic in a lot of ways. We could talk about the Marvel motion comics if you want to.
Oh, absolutely. Because the Iron Man Extremis one was very interesting. I was just kind of flipping through Netflix back it's probably like 2011, and just saw that. I was like, oh, this is interesting, and played it, and I was kind of disappointed, to be honest, just because I was expecting something like one of the
Yes.
DC animated films.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's motion
Yeah, a motion comic is a very particular thing that comic book artists tend to not like, and animation enthusiasts tend to not like. So it's kind of like it doesn't have a super good reputation. But in terms of like, if you don't want to read a comic book, or you just want something you just want to spend 20 minutes, seeing some superhero stuff, or not just superhero stuff, obviously, then it can be very interesting and fun, and it can help you get up to speed on. The ones I worked on were Uncanny X-Men. No, Astonishing X-Men. Sorry, where Joss Whedon was the writer for that, and then a whole slew of Marvel Knight stuff, which is like Wolverine and Eternals and Inhumans and some Hulk and stuff like that. And so the way it works technically, it's very interesting. I wrote a whole blog post on this, and I can send it to you. So if you want to include it on the links or whatever, that compares the original comic to the final version of the motion comic, because everything that we had to make for the motion comic, let's talk about Uncanny X-Men or Astonishing X-Men. When you look at a comic, the format of the panels can be almost anything on the page. They can be thin and tall. They can be short and wide. They can be these weird diagonal things. So what we had to do is we had to take all of that art and make it into a standardized television frame.
Oh man! So what is that? What is the aspect ratio? Is it 16:9?
That's a question I should know off the top of my head. It's probably I think it's usually 4:3, but we might have done something a little different. Formats are kind of, I won't get into that. But so my particular job, I was a character artist, and I would have to draw anything that was outside of the original art's panel to fill in for that space. Now you can do a lot of tricks with camera moves and special effects and stuff like that to minimize the amount of work. But let's just say I had to draw a lot of Logan's hairy arms. And that was pretty fun. And you have to match. So I was working on, over the course of, a year or two, I was working on, 7 or 8 different comic book artist projects. So you have to match the style for all of those different artists, and it can actually be quite tricky.
Yeah, and something I was actually kind of thinking about, because I'm holding the first book of The Last Kids on Earth, and it's somewhere between picture book and boring words only, right?
Right. Yeah.
So when you're doing your thing, of course, you have to kind of adapt the style of these illustrations.
Yes.
I would think, right?
Yeah.
Now, just from I know you as a creator, and you do lots of great stuff. Do you find that kind of work satisfying?
Like working on another person's projects, kind of a thing. Is that
right?
What you're getting at? Yeah.
Or kind of like having to match a specific style.
The answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. Usually yes. It was interesting for me going in, because I kind of came from work illustrating Dungeons and Dragons books to going into sequential art, aka graphic novels, aka comic books, and then transitioning from that into the animation industry. So when I moved from my first project in the animation industry was the motion comics. And then I moved into a cartoon called Rocket Monkeys where I started working on design. So I had to learn cartoony design sensibilities, which is this whole thing. Just the angles, and it's hard to describe, but sometimes, yeah, the cartoony aesthetic was a learning curve for me for sure. But I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoy working on new, like another show that just came on Netflix in Canada. It's been around the world for a while. Is Cupcake and Dino. And I worked on that for a few months, and that has a super fun style. So getting to draw these characters and the Last Kids on Earth characters, all that stuff has been super fun.
Yeah, I haven't actually gotten around to seeing Cupcake and Dino. Netflix has put out a lot of really interesting animation lately, like Hilda.
Yes,
I do know.
Hilda was some of the episodes of Hilda were done at the studio that I worked at. I didn't work at it, but I got to watch it being made, and that's also I would have loved to work on that show in terms of just drawing the characters and the monsters and everything.
Now, as somebody who is a storyboard artist, do you are you able to tell, like, oh, they didn't have a good storyboard, or they didn't have a good storyboard when they did this, or a storyboard really would have helped?
Honestly, I don't. I'm trying to think of. No, I can't think of anything that I've seen like professionally produced where I'm like, the cinematography on this is garbage or whatever.
Oh.
Certainly there are different styles. Like in the animation industry, there's usually you're working on a 2D show or you're working on a 3D show, and what that means is a 3D show will have computer generated elements. Like if you think about the old Futurama episodes, that was kind of the transitioning point where all the characters would be drawn in 2D, but you'd have the Planet Express ship, which was 3D, and so it could move around any angle. That was not hand drawn. So our show is kind of the same. We have a mix for Last Kids on Earth. Like the world we're working in the computer has 3D elements in, but the characters and the backgrounds are usually 2D. They have in the show a big old truck called Big Mama, and we would usually we have a program where we can also use the 3D elements as well. So we're all drawing on Cintiqs. We're not using paper or anything like that. It's all computerized. So and depending on what production you're working on, and depending on what studio you're working at, they'll use different programs. So for The Last Kids on Earth, I would have to like import the 3D model of Big Mama and move it all around to get it into the position I want to. And sometimes you can move the elements around in the program, and sometimes I just want it to look right and it's not moving, so it's just going to be a flat image, and then you draw around it.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? I forgot where we.
Yeah, no. I like the idea of like knowing, like being able to look at something and be like, oh, this thing that I love professionally, or I have a vested hobby interest in it. This is not done well, or this is done well. And I think you pretty much said like professionals will use storyboards.
Yeah, what I was going to say actually that I forgot to get to was that if you're working on a 3D show, you will get a lot more crazy angles. The camera will go underneath people's feet and can be up in the air, and things can be moving all around the camera, like Empire Strikes Back, TIE Fighter battle, whatever. Whereas if you're watching SpongeBob SquarePants or Cupcake and Dino, everything's pretty flat, like left to right kind of stuff. There'll be occasional shots which are like very inventive or crazy, but you're not moving the camera in weird ways in the environment.
Right. So, as part of your job as storyboard revisionist and storyboard artist, Have you ever given any of those like digital comic readers a try?
No.
Okay.
when it comes when it comes to reading, I still go to my local comic book store, Eighth Dimension on Main Street in Vancouver, and I will pick up the physical comics. And I have a huge stack that I'm very far behind on, but I do read them pretty much all by hand,
Well,
analog style.
the Marvel app has this really interesting feature where it just shows you the panels themselves, and you like click, and it just goes to the next panel.
That's interesting.
Uh,
I'm not
yeah,
sure if I like that.
yeah, and this is something I enjoy talking to people about because with things like The Walking Dead, where you're going through panel by panel, and all of a sudden a character is just dead. That it has a bit more impact if you don't accidentally see that part of the page
Sure.
while you're flipping.
Yeah.
And a few jokes land a lot better that way too, because you're not seeing the future in your periphery.
Yeah, I can see the pros and the cons of that way for sure. But as someone who has drawn comic books and has studied how comics are made, the use of the pages is its own storytelling element.
Yeah, I've just started like getting into how that's like a thing where you want the page to be very easy and natural to read, but you also, if there is a payoff, you have to put it in the right way so the viewer can just kind of see it as it goes, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of a couple. If you look up Will Eisner, what it's like graphic storytelling or something like that. And then Scott McCloud, I think it is. Is Scott McCloud? Understanding Comics. He goes into. They both go into great detail about how to use the page to help your narrative.
Yeah.
And sometimes, if you want that punch, you can do the big punchline or something like that on the next page. So when you flip the page, then you have your big splash or whatever, the reveal. But a lot of the times, the way that you pace your panels on the page is its own. It has its own meaning and it can give its own, feeling that can be very important to your story.
Right. Like I'm also thinking about Mad Max Fury Road. You've seen it, right?
Oh boy, have I ever.
Right. And there were a lot of like think pieces and video essays about how well it was edited because it always predicts where your eye is going to be and it cuts.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, oh, a storyboard artist probably has a lot of the same responsibilities, right?
Yeah, for sure. There are tons and tons of film rules that you have to obey when you are doing storyboards for, just film language is something you have to learn if you want to tell a story visually.
Now, do you have a favorite Marvel character?
Oh gosh, do I have? Probably MODOK, I guess.
Okay.
Possibly Devil Dinosaur.
Okay. Do you have a favorite Marvel character who is a Sorcerer Supreme?
Oh, I guess I'm going to go with Doctor Strange.
Yes. So you got to voice Doctor Strange.
Yeah, there was on Netflix right now. No, it's on YouTube. Sorry, on YouTube. Marvel has a channel, and there's a show called Marvel Hero Super. Oh no, I can't remember the name. It's Marvel Superhero Adventures. Marvel Superhero Adventures. I'm going to type that in to make sure I didn't get it wrong. Yes, that's right. Marvel Superhero Adventures. There it is. I'll just start that sentence again. So YouTube has a channel, or Marvel HQ is the channel on YouTube that has a show called Marvel Superhero Adventures. And I'm an actor. I'm a union actor. And once in a while, my agent will have me audition for cartoons. And this cartoon happened to be being made at the studio I was working at as a storyboard artist. So that was probably helpful for me getting the role of Doctor Strange on one of these little 5-minute cartoons where Spider-Man teams up with various heroes from the Marvel Universe, and they learn a valuable lesson while having fun. And my episode was Doctor Strange and a Spider-Man team up to help clean the Cloak of Levitation because it did not want to be cleaned.
Okay, so you are kind of part of the MCU.
I know. Move over, Benedict Cumberbatch.
Okay. Did you have fun doing that though? Was that like something
Oh, it was
that
super fun.
Okay, awesome.
I love voice acting. I've been, ever since I saw Super Friends as a kid, I was like, I wanna do that. That's super fun. So any chance I get, I'm happy to do it.
Okay. Now,
It's interesting that a little funny aside on that topic is I auditioned for probably like a dozen different roles on that show, like Green Goblin and Rocket Raccoon and all these other interesting characters. And the one that I got the role for was the one that I didn't really do anything funny with my voice. It's just me. There's a little bit, just a little bit of Sorcerer Supreme attitude in there, but it's basically my voice. It's not like, oh, I'm the Green Goblin. There's none of that stuff happening. It's just, that was what they wanted. They just wanted me. So that was pretty funny.
Okay. I don't know. I always love seeing voice actors I recognize from podcasts going on to do other things, and like, oh man. And I did watch that Doctor Strange little clip, and I have to say, you do just as good of a job with the character as Benedict Cumberbatch.
Well, thank you very much. I don't have as much screen time, but
well, I mean, there's what 1.3 million ways that you could watch the Cloak of Levitation.
Cloak of Levitation, yeah. That was a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully there'll be there another a comeback in the next season.
Yeah. I mean, Doctor Strange is pretty popular. I think. I tend to like those comics that he does, or the Doctor Strange comics, because of how weird they're drawn to.
Oh yeah, in the old 60s and 70s ones, yeah.
Yeah, the Ditka, right?
Yeah, super great.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a really good job of capturing that in the feature film.
Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to the next Doctor Strange because Scott Derrickson, the director, does say he wants to go more in the horror direction.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'll keep my peepers peeled for that one.
Yeah. Now, so I'm a pretty big fan of shows that would normally be considered children's shows. Like, I really, really enjoy Steven Universe or DuckTales, or and I've been noticing that there are these shows that seem innocuous and they seem like children's shows, and you kind of get there, you start watching it. It's a little bit of jokes for everybody, and then there's a massive gut punch, like what happens on Adventure Time almost every other episode. It seems to me that animation is making a conscious decision to tell better, deeper stories that appeal to people who are not just 12 years old. Have you noticed this as a professional insider?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting balance. I think, as this goes with both animation and comics, it's become the people who grew up on comics, back in the day, these were always considered, oh, that's kid stuff. And now the people who liked it are making, Avengers Endgame. And we're all kind of getting what we imagined as we were kids, on the silver screen. And I think so audiences are also getting a little more sophisticated in terms of I feel like when you look at when you go back to Looney Tunes, that stuff was never made for kids.
Yeah. And I do enjoy watching some of the Looney Tunes stuff today that has the the opening with sometimes Leonard Maltin or somebody like, hey, there are racial things in this.
Yeah.
We're giving this to you unedited because we appreciate the art, but
And not just in terms of controversial stuff as well, though there's certainly that. But I mean, just in terms of like the level of humor, there are gags in there. These, almost all cartoons are written by adults, right? So even when you are writing for it kind of depends on what your target audience is, but in the SpongeBob SquarePants range, there's tons of adult humor in those. Um, and in terms of Last Kids on Earth, they're obviously writing for kids. Once you're old enough to not be, wetting your bed because there's zombies in it, I think anyone can enjoy it. Um, I think of a couple of. Do you know The Amazing World of Gumball or The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack?
Yes. Yeah.
So those are cartoons that are very like, there's a lot of Cartoon Network cartoons that are very um uh, for kids but also for adults.
Yeah. I think back to when I was younger, and I remember my parents really not minding when I watched Animaniacs.
Hmm.
And I think I'm kind of figuring out that, like, oh, this was better for them, because they could kind of watch a little bit and enjoy a little bit of it. Um, it's just something, I keep noticing in animation for both kids and not, that like there's just this tendency to, like, oh, an emotional gut punch. Oh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In terms of just the character and the writing. Yeah. It also depends on the show, I would think. Yeah. I probably haven't seen as much Adventure Time as you, ironically enough, yeah. It can be very sophisticated writing as well, which is great.
yeah.
Cartoons that make you cry.
God, dude, there are some episodes like, have you seen Final Space?
I've seen the first two episodes. I haven't. It's on my list.
Yeah, it is. The main character is very annoying, and they recognize that pretty quickly but it becomes an emotional roller coaster.
Hmm. I'll check it out.
Yeah, they even make fun of it a little bit in the beginning of the second season, specifically by referencing Reddit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Well, okay, so the flip side of the being appreciated by adults, modern cartoons being appreciated by adults, is standards and practices is constantly evolving. Like, you could show people smoking in cartoons some time ago. I don't know exactly when the transition happening. I would say it's probably like I remember Batman animated series, like all the cops have like toothpicks in their mouths instead of like cigarettes and stuff like that. And that's
Right.
all. I'm not complaining about that by any stretch, but it's interesting to see the kind of tropes that you rely on for depicting a character, or things that you think you could do, but then they get called out, that you have to change. So I'm trying to think of like I think there's a fair amount of guns in Last Kids on Earth, but they're all like Nerf guns and stuff like that. So, and we have to be very careful about how we show them, like how we show them being used and stuff like that. And again, I'm not complaining about it. It's kind of like an interesting and challenging framework to work within and still try and make your gag or your storyline or whatever, as powerful and interesting as you can.
I'm also thinking about from Batman the animated series, where whenever he would throw somebody off a building or something, they'd always have to show, uh, you know, them in the tree looking up at Batman as he goes away.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't kill them. He didn't. They're fine.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at a first draft of a storyboard versus the final product in some cases.
Oh man, yeah, I bet that is great. But we should wrap up. I don't want to keep monopolizing your time, but I'm wondering, do you have recommendations for animations for our listeners? Maybe some kind of really good animation, or really good, even just movies or comic books.
Oh, well, let me think now. As I mentioned, Amazing World of Gumball and Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack are quite good in the more recent. I mean, within the past 10 years. I don't know. I think like Gumball is probably on like season 7 or something. My favorite animated movie of all time is Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind. Have you seen it?
Yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. Also post-apocalyptic. I got a thing for that. I won't deny. And then also, I'm really enjoying discovering Wander Over Yonder, which is a few years old now. It's a little frustrating being in Canada, not having Cartoon Network, and Cartoon Network not releasing almost any of their good shows on DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah. I've really been trying to get my hands on Over the Garden Wall.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah. Speaking of another show that just gives you an emotional gut punch. Yeah. Are there any Japanese animated ones besides the Miyazaki that you recommend? Have you seen Your Name?
I have not seen Your Name. I missed it when they came through theaters. It's still on my list. I have a big list. But I haven't, I don't watch that much anime, although I've enjoyed what I've seen of One Punch Man. I'm a little late to the game on that one as well.
Oh yeah, but what we actually did an episode on One Punch Man for our patrons.
Nice.
And yeah. One Punch Man is quite a ride, but for me, I watch a lot of the what people who enjoy anime would call just normal mainstream trash.
Right.
But Your Name is really good. There's a few others, but anything by Studio Ghibli, pretty much.
You know what else I saw? I think it was last year. I saw a movie called Bird Boy.
This is what is it, French or Spanish, right?
Yeah, I think it's Spanish or yeah. Let me look it up right now so we can make sure. Yeah, it is directed by Alberto Vazquez and Pedro Rivero. So yes, I would say Spanish. And I really quite enjoyed that. Not for kids at all, I would say.
Yeah. There's
and
another one.
it has a very kind of, the characters are drawn in kind of that chibi, it's got the giant head and the small body. So it looks like it's for kids, but it is not for kids, and I appreciate that.
Well, I mean, that's how they get, you need to pick a certain amount of children to traumatize.
That's right. Yeah, it's like
lure them in.
Remember when we watched what's the movie with the rabbits? Watership Down. Oh, good times.
Yeah. You see, you gotta lure in and screw up a few kids mentally just to make sure that artists are born, right?
Yep.
Now, I realize we've gone through this entire thing. You haven't really given any kind of synopsis on The Last Kids on Earth.
Oh well, The Last Kids on Earth are the last kids on Earth. It starts out with Jack Sullivan. He has to find his best friend after a monster and zombie apocalypse. I don't want to give too much away. He finds some of them, and kind of it's an interesting. So right now the movie, which I think is just over an hour long, is on Netflix. And then we've been working on subsequent episodes, which will be 22-minute episodes. And there's a lot of buzz about the voice actors that are on this show. There's Catherine O'Hara. There's
I've got the list right here. There's some great casting. Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill, that's the name I was looking for and was just brain farting on. Keith David. Strangely, the woman from Daredevil, what's her name?
Rosario Dawson.
Rosario Dawson is interesting, and Bruce Campbell But I was going to say, interestingly enough, we don't really see much or any of some or all of those characters in the first movie. But don't let that dissuade you from watching it because it's quite fun. It's quite fun.
Okay. So there is a starter movie to kind of set up the world?
Yeah, and then as we progress through the subsequent episodes, there'll be more characters added in it, some twists and turns. It's quite fun. It's a fun ride.
Right. And see, it's interesting because I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to for this episode. So the listeners will know a little bit more about how I feel. Hopefully, very positively.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of the book already.
It was a joy to work on, and just I just wanted to mention something that I should have tacked on to when I was explaining about being a storyboard revisionist. So the storyboard artist will, basically draw out the entire story, and so usually the revisionist is someone who will just do tweaks to it. And so when I took on the job, it's an interesting balance. Of workload and creative input. As a storyboard artist, you have like a huge amount of creative input, but your workload is also quite intense. Whereas if you're a revisionist, your creative input is minimal, but you have a much more work-life balance. Let's put it that way. So when I came on as a revisionist, I was like, I want to start as a revisionist, and then maybe I'll transition to do full boards. After a few months. We'll see how it goes. But it turned out that the way that this series was put together, as I said, with a bunch of different board artists working on an episode at the same time, I actually did get to board from scratch a couple of sequences. So when you're watching it, when they get to the gear up montage in the gymnasium of the high school, that's pretty much all me.
Oh, I will give you feedback.
Yes, please do.
Oh, man.
And I cannot stress enough how amazing this team has been. They've been super fun to work with, and I'm working under Ed and Steve and Will for this first movie, and it's just been a joy. So I hope everyone appreciates all of the work the team has put out there for you guys to enjoy.
All right. Now, Warren, you have an interesting way of pronouncing a few words.
Oh no.
And I have a friend who got really upset at one specific episode of Caustic Soda.
Good. We want to make people upset.
Which, by the way, listeners, Caustic Soda, Hard Science for Soft People. You can find it on iTunes still. But could you pronounce the word debris?
Well, if I was on Caustic Soda, I would say Debris.
Okay. And does this show that you've been working on have a lot of debris?
There is actually a fair amount of debris in the post-apocalyptics of Last Kids on Earth. There's papers flying around all the time.
That's now is that kind of animation where it's like little particle effects in the background? In your experience, is that more annoying, or do like computer programs take care of most of
that? From a storyboard artist's perspective, it's fine. It's great. I love I love cluttering it up with dust and particles, but you might get a different story from an animator.
And have you seen any 3D animation lately?
Oh gosh, have I?
Yes.
Should I go to my IMDb .com ratings and see what I've seen lately? I've seen like 7 movies in the past 7 days. So it's computer animated movies. Oh gosh, I don't know if I have recently.
Well, I was actually thinking like also on Netflix, one of their best animated is Troll Hunters. Have you gotten a chance to watch that?
I'll tell you what. My friend and I were putting together a pitch for a cartoon that we were pitching to the studios around town, and it it turned out to be very, very similar to one that just came out on Netflix called what is it? It's the follow up to Troll Hunters. It's called Three Deep or something like that.
Three Below, I think.
Three Below, that's the one.
Okay.
So that came out just before we were going to make our presentation. So we had to change a bunch of things around to make our cartoon a bit more different from that. And but as I was watching that, I was like, why are all these trolls showing up in this space? This Aliens on Earth TV show. Like, where are these trolls coming from? And then I realized they're both produced by Del Toro. They're both in the same universe. So I haven't actually watched Troll Hunters, but I've watched a few episodes of Three Below.
Troll Hunters is good, but would you say this makes you and Guillermo del Toro mortal enemies now?
No. I love that guy.
It's a little hard to hate him.
Yeah. Will he make an adaptation of the Mountains of Madness, or will he not? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, he did say everything he wanted to do was kind of done in Prometheus, which that's really weird to me.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, and to be honest, I'm fine with him with not having a movie of the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah.
But if they do, I hope they will use the song from the Darkest of the Hillside Thickets off of the album Cthulhu Strikes Back, called Shoggoths Away.
An amazingly fun band to listen to. Also, interestingly enough, the voice actor, Nick Wolfhard, who is the voice of your main cast.
Yes, Jack Sullivan.
Yes. He is in a movie called Howard Lovecraft and the Kingdom of Madness.
Oh, I've heard of that, but I have not watched it.
I'm not going to ask you any comments. I will say it does have a 7.3 on IMDb, which is very good for IMDb.
Okay, sure. That's fair.
Um,
And it's a CG movie, right? A CG
Yes.
Animation, yeah.
Yes, it is a CG movie.
Is this a series? Are there a couple of these Howard Lovecraft films?
Yes, it looks like there's at least two.
This is the kind of thing I should know.
I'm just going to say it looks kind of canned animation-ish.
Oh, okay. All right, good to know.
Yeah. You know, every once in a while, the Transmorphers, but
okay, yes, right.
I don't know. It is rated pretty highly on IMDb, so maybe this would be an interesting version of Howard Lovecraft.
Okay, well, it's got Ron Perlman and Christopher Plummer in it, so that's interesting.
I mean, it can't be bad. Those guys don't.
Oh, that's the Frozen Kingdom. Sorry, Howard Lovecraft and the Frozen Kingdom.
I mean, those guys don't give their voices to anything that's bad at all, right?
Also animated locally. I did not know that.
Oh, and Jeffrey Combs is H.P. Lovecraft.
Well, what's not to love about that? I love that guy.
Yes. I remember the episode where you had him in.
Yes, on Caustic Soda. He was a very special guest when we went down to the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival.
Okay, Torin, do you have any pluggables that you want to get off of your head or chest?
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Any what?
Sorry, do you have any pluggables?
Pluggables! Oh, pluggables! Oh my goodness. Yes, I do. Let's see. What can I tell you? What's going on in my life right now? The Darkest of the Hillside Thickets, my H.P. Lovecraft theme band, is going to have. We're on the tail end of a new music video being. I think this is probably exclusive for your podcast. This announcement for our song Arachnotopia. That should be going live pretty quick. I don't know if there's anything else I can talk about. But exciting things are happening in the world of miniature paintings in my living room, let me tell you that.
You know, on Facebook, every time you post one of these beautiful figures you've painted, I always just get a little chuckle.
Yes, I'm a nerd.
Yes, and you really do love post-apocalyptic stuff.
I do. It's great.
All right. Well, Torin, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for talking with me and letting me kind of fanboy out over getting
Thank
to
you for
talk
having
to
me.
my podcast hero.
Yay! Well, I'm glad that you're carrying the torch after
Yes.
the end of Caustic Soda. Oh, wait, there is something I want to plug.
Yes, your other podcast.
I want to plug the other podcast I'm on called Adventure.exe, which is a live play D&D podcast. I know there's a million of them out there right now, but check out Adventure.exe because it's the only one that has me, baby, me. And I play, I'm in the second season as a main character. The first season I came on and I basically played Ricardo Montalban for a few episodes. In season 2, I played a character called Malachi Purvis at your service, doing kind of that Tim Curry-esque voice that you just heard. And now I'm playing a character named Rufus, who kind of talks like this. He's kind of like a Tom Waits kind of bard who doesn't do a lot of singing.
That's amazing. Well,
and all the other players on the show are equally as entertaining as I am.
That's great to hear. I've listened to a little bit of it, but I have some problems listening to people play D&D because I always want to play like no, that's not how I would do it.
Yeah, listening it's weird. Listening it's great fun for me because I get to play, but I do understand about the idea of people not listening to D&D or playing D&D are two completely separate things.
All right, Torin, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I look forward to future Geek 101 stuff.
Yeah. Whenever we do animation, I will try to contact you because I'd love to hear your opinions on some of the stuff coming up.
Sure, sounds good.
And we're back, Andy. That was a wonderful interview. I listened to every word.
Oh man, it was really great how you were there, but you were quiet and respectful the entire time.
That's totally what happened. But before we sign off after that wonderful interview, we are going to do our homework. So, Andy, why don't you start off and give us a piece of homework for the listener?
Okay, listeners, go to your theaters. Go sit down and watch Ad Astra, all right? If you are a fan of such great sci-fi classics as 2001 or Annihilation, the slow, kind of very existential science fiction, I really think that you will enjoy Ad Astra. And we're reviewing it next week, so hey, you should go watch it anyway.
Yeah, so in the discussion for Ad Astra, we'll also try to talk about movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Interstellar, Annihilation, movies like that. Even though Annihilation is not exactly a space movie, but we'll try to branch out that conversation a little bit. But yeah, great homework, Andy. Oh, did you have another piece of homework that's not tied directly into the episode?
I mean, listeners, you should also go see Hustlers. It's a fun little movie. I did see that this weekend. But go see Ad Astra first.
Okay. My homework this week is, now that school is back, I've decided to take up reading once again. And I have restarted The Hobbit. I am continuously going back to fantasy stories that I know and love. I was inspired recently after The Dark Crystal, because in my heart, I don't believe that Game of Thrones is going to end. So, go back to that great classic that you fell in love with and helped you fall in love with other fantasy books. It might be Game of Thrones, it might be The Hobbit, it might be Artemis Fowl, it might be Harry Potter. But now that, school's in session for kids and teachers and college students and all that jazz, if you haven't read a book in a while, why don't you revisit that one?
And if you're listening to this 10 years in the future, it might be The Last Kids on Earth by Max Brellier and Douglas Holgate. So maybe you should go read that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea there, Andy. All right, next week, like you said, we're doing Ad Astra and other existential and I don't want to say dread, but existential sci-fi films. Andy, let's where can people find you before we sign off?
You can find me online on Twitter at Hebrews Paleo.
All right, you can find me at Dread Pirate Roddy. You can find us at Geek One On Podcast on Twitter and Facebook and Patreon. Email us geek1onpod@gmail.com. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed.